So way back I ran a failed Kickstarter, but in the process of producing it, I commissioned this piece of art. This species is called the Cynom, and I very much wanted to include it in my game. Now I want to talk about the lore, but first let's see if I can actually get decent background images using stable diffusion. Nice. Now I named these after the scientific name of prairie dog, right after binging Prairie Dog Manor, the westernest, most yeehaw nature documentary you ever darn did see. Now let's start with how they were made. You know them, you love them, they probably cursed your dad. Hags. These lovely, not so lovely creatures are known for messing with assorted entities and have made many monsters, magic items, and other harmful things in the process. So Dark Wizard, searching for army, sees a bunch of prairie dogs, makes a bargain with them hags, and now he's got an army of these prairie dog people. Very intimidating, very terrifying, very animalistic. And then he gets swallowed up by the Shadowfell, never to be seen again. So the prairie dogs are just kind of around now and no longer feel like killing everything, thanks to the handy intervention of whatever deity of kindness you want to insert here. So now we have this brand new species that we just kind of threw into the tribal stage of spore, and now they're trying to figure out how to get along. Now if you watch the Prairie Dog Manor, you can get a general vibe of prairie dogs' natural behaviors, but you know that those gotta be modified by our magic and high intelligent creatures. So let's start with one of the bigger concepts, territory. You see, women can just stick around areas and they'll be fine wherever they stay, but male prairie dogs basically have to kind of set themselves up an area and stop other prairie dogs from taking it over. So in this case, there's not just these male prairie dogs that are trying to take over. If you leave, you can come by magic, you can come by equipment, you can come by all the stuff from the outer world, go in, and then you have a lot of force when you're taking over, which completely changes the dynamic of these Cynoms compared to natural prairie dogs. Additionally, I imagine full might makes right might collapse in some areas, because people act under what they believe will be in their best interest. So if we look into our prairie dog regions, they'll probably be led by the male that can protect them best, but it might not be a matter of ousting the other male so much as they simply provide the best arrangement. So what I can view is you get like a democratic council where you have the women of the society elect their male leaders of different territories, so they start dividing it up and kind of culturalizing. So this sets up prairie dogs who desire to become leadership to go out into the world and try and gather what they can from the other civilizations. Now I want to keep their time scale the same as real life prairie dogs. So in real life you have the first year, the second year, and then the third year is normally when they start taking territory, taking over. Here I would imagine it would be something like first 2 years they are under protection, they are cool, and then the third year they go out, they have a voyage, they collect weapons, they collect whatever they can from the greater world. Then they come back after about a year and start presenting all their cool stuff. After that they have until they are 8 before they die. Yeah, prairie dogs don't live that long, it's quite unfortunate. So this results in them having an incredible amount of ambition and being more prone to turning to concepts like dark magic, where it's a lot easier to get really powerful really quick. Since technology is considered valued by the councils, they are relatively quickly advancing through various concepts. At the moment, most of that is coming down to farming equipment, and the beginnings of metalworking, but not very heavy into the metalworking. Leatherworking's probably also starting to pop up. Now, housing would mostly be done below ground. Can I picture how dwarves like to build below ground? Or hobbits. But I imagine that above ground structures would become kind of symbols of prestige among the prairie dog people. It means they're not just like good enough to be fine if they hide and whatnot, but that they can fight off people who might raise down their buildings. But I imagine these would mostly be like functions of community. So for example, I think a windmill built in a Cynom village where they have figured out farming could be used like as a communal milling location. And since that needs to be built above ground, they build it there. They are now considered very respectable among other prairie dog tribes. Their exact trading metrics I'm not really sure about. I think that I'd want them to be leaning into heavy trading of farmed goods for assorted more powerful things. Can I picture how the Native Americans, whenever they wanted to do trading, they would trade raccoon pelts, farmed goods, whatnot, in exchange for mostly military stuff, guns, gunpowder, what have you. And finally, I kind of want to do a Feywild version. Check out the fairy dog. That pun stunk. So I threw some fairy wings on there so the art would look different, and then I decided on what they actually do. So the fairy wings aren't going to actually fly because flying kind of breaks a lot of RPGs. But what we can do is we can say that it is a gatherer of magical energy that can be born onto prairie dogs who are Fey touched. So the exact nature of Fey touch will vary a lot from saying to say, but for my purposes, it's gonna basically mean they crossed into the Feywild and then they left the Feywild. And this gives them an enhanced potential for Fey magic. So in this specific case, the Fey magic that they are capable of conjuring will probably mostly be illusion and enchantment magic, which they can then use to secure human, dwarf, what have you allies, and then they move into the prairie dogs with check out all my allies that I gathered. And that's how they take over their section of town. We can also have this Feywild nature set them to live a lot longer, and this can make them a lot closer to humans, which can be a lot of fun. Now I know what you're thinking, if we're doing the Feywild, what are we doing with the Shadowfell? Well, I was thinking that the person who made them was swallowed up by the Shadowfell. Basically, he got his own domain of dread, which was going to be a plot point back when I originally designed these. Here we can do something a bit more. He has started building a kingdom within the Shadowfell, and any Cynom that enters the Shadowfell has to make a will save of some variety or be drawn to that kingdom. That kingdom is basically a hive mind and is the greatest population of Cynom in the plane. He plans to expand into the material plane, but currently is lacking the control outside of the Shadowfell. So these humanoid prairie dogs become a big deal and kind of start to spread across the world. So their civilizations would probably rise and fall kind of constantly on account of the 8-year lifespan. I could easily see a human like witnessing at least 3 of these things falling apart within their lifetime. And you can also have there be territory issues where they spread over a section of land that the kingdom had previously claimed but just didn't build anything on. And you could make some fun conflict out of that. You could also make them just way more monstrous than I have them here. I have them here as kind of a player race, a demi-human if you will. But if you want to change that, you can instead have them be a lot more feral and animalistic in their nature. And that makes them territorial and actively harmful, which makes them enemies in a lot of circumstances.